YouTube, what's going on? Today we're going to look at how to use GitHub, which is a very collaborative platform for different projects, whether it's coding or other types of projects that you might find in the workplace. Today we're going to look at creating a simple repository and how we can use the command line and Visual Studio Code to add files or new changes to files or even remove files from GitHub. So we'll start by making a new repository. And this part you just put in any name you want. It has to be different from another name that you might have in an old repository, but we'll just go with simple repo for this one. Then these are the parts you could do. You can make it public or private. So public, anybody on the internet can see it. Private, you can pick who you would like to see the repository and who can make changes. We'll just go through. You're able to add a README file right here, but we'll do that a little later on to show one of the commit ways. And you can add a git ignore or even choose a license. But we'll just go with the regular basic repository here. So the next page it brings you to is here where it gives you a couple options. If you're making a new repository and you want to do it right from the command line, then you just follow through these different steps and it'll help you make the repository. If you have a repository already that you want to put into this one, then this is different ways or how you would do that in the command line. We'll just go with, for right now, creating a new repository. So what I first did was just made a folder in on my local computer and just navigated to it in the command line using the CD and then just where the path to the folder is. And the first thing we'll write here is just write what it says here. We're able to copy the top line. You can just take the lines for as they are. GitHub makes it pretty simple for you. You can just follow what it says and it'll do it pretty much for you. But the first thing we did was we just made this README file that we're eventually going to add as our first file to the repository. First we'll write out git init, which initializes the repository on your local computer. Then we can do git add, and this is where we're adding that README file that we just made in the first one. And so now that adds that to our local repository. It's not yet in GitHub, but that's what comes later on. So first the next thing we're going to do is this git commit. And then this part in the quotes is just where we'll say first commit as it says over here on GitHub. But what it really means is just you can put whatever you want there. And it's just saying, normally you do a little descriptive maybe phrase about it, like a couple words, and it's just so since this is the first commit, we just name it first commit, where if we were saying updated a certain property of the code, we'd say updated this property, and then we just save that as our commit. And so we'll run that, and you can see it says it inserted one file, and that's the README file here. And so our next thing is a git branch. So this makes the main branch on GitHub, which is what we're going to be pushing our code to. And so then we made our main branch, and then we'll run the next one that says git remote, add origin. So this adds, or I'm sorry, the git branch main is on our local computer, then the git remote add origin, since it's saying remotely add to GitHub, our origin that we're going to be putting all of our files to. And then it just has to copy the link, so that's the repository link, paste that in, run that. Now we started that origin, and then we run a git push to that origin main branch that we made before. And what that does is everything that we've committed, so that would be this file, this README file, that's all going to be pushed to GitHub. So we run that, we let it go. It does its little process here, then boom, and it says it's been uploaded to the new branch main. And then if we come back to GitHub and we reload this page, we can see it started, and we can actually see the README file here, which just has nothing yet because we didn't add anything to it. But that's how we start our just a simple repository that you can add files to and just take it away from there. Now what we'll look at next is another way to add files to your GitHub repository. So the first way that we did it was we made that README file, and you could even do this if you're in the folder and you do a new file, and then you're able to come into the command line and you can add the file, which is what we did up here, the git add the README file, just the name of the file you put. And then lastly, we did the git commit. So it's whatever you add is what it will commit. So you can add multiple files at a time and then commit them all at once. And then once you eventually push your commits, then it will put them on GitHub. So that's the first way we're going to look at, or that we looked at, for adding files. Now the second way we'll look at is kind of like a little more useful. It makes it seem a lot more readable in this. So if we're in Visual Studio Code, and I already have loaded up the folder that we're running. And if we were to add a file here, and we do say just a basic HTML file, we go in, we'll put in our normal doc type, our head, everything we need just for a regular HTML file. Come down here, and in the body we'll put just a regular header, just so we know that it works. We'll save it, come back to the folder here, and quick run it. It'll pull it up in our browser, and there it is. The test text, it works fine. HTML is good. So then we'll come back, and this is a new file now, so we can go to our, let's see what happened here. Oh, it's pulling all the old files. It's really, this is just pulling every file that's ever been brought up. All right, well, in this one, we're just going to, normally it'll be just the one file that you just added, and we're just ran into a problem here that I'm going to have to fix later. But what we would do, if we could find, say, this git config file is what we wanted to add to our repository. So in this case, we would be wanting to find the index.html one, but if we could find it, we'd simply choose it, and then you type in a message, and that same way that we put that first commit message, we said before, just you could write in here and do first commit. And then actually I'll just add all of these just to run it through, and then I will be keeping this repo. So say we'll put our second commit instead of first, because we already used first. So we can put second commit, and then you just click this little check mark. It's kind of an extension of Visual Studio Code is what we're in on this side. But we click the check mark, it'll run the commit. Now this is going to take much longer than if you were to do just the regular adds of a file or two, but because now it's doing 5,000 of them. But the way this works is it commits it on its own, and instead of, you don't have to use the command line as much, but what we would do then after that is we would run a git push to our origin like we did before. So when we run git push, it's going to take everything that's been committed that we're doing here, so all 5,000 of these will be committed eventually once it can run it in time. But if we ran the git push origin main, then it would take all those files, push them to our GitHub repo, and they would show up here. Now the last thing about GitHub that's very interesting to look at is the Insights tab. You can look at the different types of contributors, of all the different people that are working on it. It gives you statistics of how many commits they've had, how many lines they've added to the GitHub repository. We're able to look at the traffic of, right now it has nothing because nobody's visited or made any clones of the repository, but if somebody had, then it will show us things about that, and goes through all the different commits here. So we have one today, on Monday, and that's when we did the README file. It will, let's see, now it's going to take forever. So, but really, yeah, that's the basics of GitHub, how to create a simple repository, two different ways of how to add files. You can either do it with the command line or in this Visual Studio little add-on extension to it that makes it a little more simple. You don't have to do as much coding, or I guess command line coding. And other than that, I mean, there's multiple other ways to do that as well. I mean, if you just do a simple search, there's at least 10 different ways that you can add things to GitHub. There's the GitHub desktop. There's different types of CLIs that you can use. It's really a versatile program that helps with collaboration in companies and in small projects too. And even if you don't want to share it with anybody, just to keep your stuff on here to get another little backed up version of it in case something happens on your own laptop or computer. And yeah, but that's really the basics of GitHub. Thanks for watching.